Good morning and welcome to the Entrepreneurial Journey. We got an interesting setup this morning. We got three around the table.
Love
So
it.
this is kind of a fun thing. We got the table going on and we're having a good time. So thank you for joining Entrepreneurial Journey. I'm Dave Westcott, CEO of TransBlue. And you know what? I'll let you guys do your own introductions today. I know you well, but why don't you just kick it off one at a time? This is Paul and Dave, but go ahead and give your own little quick introduction.
Well, I'm Paul Perez, and I am the founder and president of Accelerated Breakthrough. We're a training, coaching, and consulting company.
And I'm Dave Lundquist, and I am the executive director of Enbridge Global, which is a nonprofit foundation that gives back into the community. And nonprofit, great, noble causes.
So this is awesome. We got a business leader and we got a give back guy. All around the table.
Two business leaders.
Two business leaders.
There you go.
There we go.
Hey, I own a business.
Hey, we're all business leaders.
We're all business. I own a
We're
business.
all business leaders. We're just all trying to be like Paul. So this is it. You work for yourself and you're a consultant, which is awesome. So this is perfect for the entrepreneurial journey because we talk about growing business. We talk about building business and we talk about that $1 million idea. $1 million doesn't get you as far as it used to get you, but there's still that idea of reaching $1 million, becoming a millionaire, making enough significant income to take care of your family. And the idea behind entrepreneurship is, hey, I'm going to be wealthy. And, Harvard Business School says entrepreneurship is the endeavor into something noble with limited resources.
Yeah.
And so that's the definition of entrepreneurship by Harvard Business School. So I think about that, and that's like how a lot of us get started. And so many start in business with this idea, with this dream that we're going to have the white picket fence and the beautiful house, and we're going to be on the boat, all weekend long, and you're going to have all of the perks of life. But in reality, it's not like that.
Yeah.
In reality, it's a lot of hours.
Yeah.
And it's a lot of time. And a lot of business owners don't spend their time in the business, building their businesses. They get stuck in the weeds of their businesses, doing accounting, doing sales, doing operations, filling holes, not making the profit that they want. So it's awesome to have you on the call because what you do is you come alongside business owners and you help them achieve their goals.
Yeah.
Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah. Thank you for before I go into that, I will tell you that business is intensely personal, right? I know that you and I both know that the foundation of our U.S. economy is the small business.
Yeah.
Right. And you may or may not know this, but the word economy comes from the Greek word oikos, which means home.
I did not know that.
Yeah, and so really, I think what it implicates is that it's personal. It starts in, and you said it. You said reach that 7-figure mark, that $1 million mark, so that you can bless your family, and then as that expands, right, whatever's pouring out of your bushel, you can bless other people.
Yeah.
So, I think it's important to remember that it is personal, because the entrepreneur is the person who would gladly work 80 hours to avoid working 40, right?
Wait a minute, I got to do the math on that. We're going to work 80 to avoid working 40. But that's true.
We don't want to have a job. We want to be autonomous.
That's right.
We want to own our destiny and kind of have some say there.
That's a great thing.
And that comes with a lot of pain too.
Yes, it does.
It does.
So what I like to do with people is, quite simply at the individual, or team, and then organizational level, I use a very systems thinking approach, right? Complex systems are just made up of systems, right? If I'm sitting here by myself and then David walks into the room, the system has just changed.
Yeah.
And then you walk into the room and the system changes. And the people who are off camera, they're here, they're part of a system. And so all systems need simple rules by which they need to work. So what I do is I come alongside people and I say, I use a system I call the 4A system, which is we do assessments first. And so we assess. And those can be formal assessments, scientific assessments, or just asking questions, getting to know people, finding out what makes them tick, where do they want to be, what do they want out of life. Those are all forms of assessment. So there's assessment, and then there's awareness. So we're pulling out of the subconscious. That's called you're explicating. You're making explicit what's in the implicit. You're pulling out of the subconscious and helping people wrap language around, this is what I want. And then also, these are the things that are getting in my way, or that are militating against my ability to get there, right? So that's the assessment. Then awareness is showing them, this is what we came up with.
Right.
The third A is acceptance, right? Because we all know that there's lots of times where we face the truth, but we don't want to face the truth, so we run away and we don't own it.
Yeah.
Right. And then the last is, and then only then is when we move to action, so that people can really know. And in my 20 years as a naval officer, I always make sure that when we're going into a mission, that we know what are we up against, and get emotionally.
You're assessing the variables.
But also preparing ourselves emotionally for the fact that we may not necessarily know what all the variables are. So developing emotional capacity. And that's part of the journey. So you ask, how do I do that? I help people with those 4 A's, and then I come alongside them for the journey and help them close the gaps between where they are and where they want to be.
That's very cool. So we're gathering intelligence. We're learning about people. We're taking that intelligence. And once we have awareness, we can now do something with that.
Yeah.
Right? Like we can take that awareness, and now we have the ability to make decisions. That's basically what I hear you saying, is like, we're aware, we can make decisions, and we can solve problems if we want, or we can bury our head in the sand if we want. We can run away.
We can take any one of the choices. Right?
But we have that ability.
So Paul, a lot of business guys out there, what are some of the primary blocks? What are they not aware of that they become self-aware in their time with you? What are some of the big ones?
I think one of the things, so primarily I'm a leadership guy.
Okay.
And my goal, I know that you all have different vision and mission statements in your organizations. My vision statement is to change the way leadership is done in America. And hopefully, that'll, who knows where that'll go after that. But right now I'm starting with home, right?
Yeah.
Oikos, our home is America.
Yep.
So to change the way leadership is done in America. And the reason why I think that's important, Dave, is because leadership is a social process. And it's, you can, if you violate the social contracts, written and unwritten, spoken and unspoken, then you're going to have a very hard time leading.
Sure.
And so what gets in the way is we make up reasons for the way things happen instead of taking the time to really suss out what really is the meaning of why things are happening the way they do, right? Yeah. And so cause and effect.
In other words, we like to make up stories.
Exactly. We make stuff up. And sometimes, and by the way, none of us is immune to that.
No, I know. Some of us are better at that than others, though, unfortunately. We like to make up our own reality.
Because we don't want to take responsibility.
Yeah, it's easier to make
At the end of the day, we want to blame somebody.
That's a huge one. And the other one, too, Dave, I'm in the Dave and Dave show. The other thing is we want to just check off the box.
Yeah.
Oh, if I already know what that is, I can place it in this neat little box, and then I can move on. I can just go on to the next thing instead of wrestle with the uncertainty of a thing, or the nuances or the vagaries of a thing, right? We just, boom. It's like if we go listen to somebody give a talk or a sermon or whatever, right? I like to use the iPhone analogy. I'm not going to get on my iPhone, but I go into a meeting and I'm listening to the speaker, and within about a minute or two, I'm listening for cues are, do I agree with this person or do I not agree? And then you know what I do? If I agree with them, I'm like, I already understand what he's talking about. I look at my phone. If I don't agree with them, you know what? I don't want to hear anything this person has to say. I check out, and then I go to my phone. And that's kind of the world we live in right now.
Yeah, it is. It's true.
Yeah, that's so true. That engagement, right? It's how quickly you pick up your phone and start scrolling, and pick up your phone and start scrolling. Actually, I'm a believer in this. Here's the thing that I do. I get my phone. Now, I'm hobbled at the moment because I got a broken wing. One of my ankles is broken. But so what I find myself doing is if I find myself not paying attention, I actually throw the phone. Because with a broken ankle, I can't go get it.
Yeah.
I gotta wait for someone to come get it for
Training,
me.
baby.
I gotta
You're
I gotta
training.
get it. But you know what? I think that this is like you touched on it. Okay, that's one thing. But also, one of the biggest things that I see in entrepreneurial journey for entrepreneurs is the home life is not a happy home life, and you see a lot of divorce. The divorce rate is crazy, broken families like crazy. But I think a lot of it comes down to that phone. I think, you get home, you've worked hard all day, and it's like your wife's telling you something and you pick up the phone. Do you start scrolling right through when she's talking to you?
Yeah.
The kids are coming over to give you a hug and wait a minute, I got my Instagram, and you're flipping through, or hey, I got to check another email.
One more message, right?
Right. And so when do you stop in this day of connectivity? Like, because you're always connected, people are going to send you emails. It's funny because like I will stop my email right around 6:00 at night. And typically what I do is I take my phone when I get home, I walk in the door, and then I go into my home office, I plug it in, I leave it there, and I close the door. And I typically don't pick it up till the next day. And so I get this entire break of time where there's no phone. And that for me is absolutely huge. But I'll tell you, by the time I check that phone again at 9:00 in the morning or whatever it is, there'll be average between 35 and 60 emails that happen between 6:00 at night and 9:00 in the morning. That's insane.
It is insane. Yeah.
And so what you're talking about is that connectivity. So not only in business, but in your home life, you got to step away from that.
Yeah.
You got to put that away because, like, how do you put God first, right? Because I'm a believer. How do you put God first if you're doing that? And another thing is when I go to church, I leave my phone at home or in the car. I don't even take my phone with me to church because that
Great.
same thing that you mentioned is I don't particularly like what the pastor's talking about today. And I just immediately start.
Yeah.
I mean, I might start filing junk mail, right? You know what I mean? But did I learn
That must be a
anything?
really bad sermon that
I know,
day.
a really bad sermon.
No, but you tune it out and you miss the opportunity to be able to really grow,
Yeah.
because you've just violated a boundary. And I think that's really kind of what you're talking about is you got to have those boundaries in your life and know what you're doing and be attentive to where you are at. It's like our kids, I mean, you can walk in and you can give them a busy signal and, they just know dad as, the guy who walks in and gives them a busy signal and they try to break through. But, if you're on your phone, what are you saying to them? Well, the phone's more important, which is not a good signal to give your kids.
Yeah. Yeah.
So when you talk about redefining leadership, and economy starts at home, I mean, do you do a lot of talking about home life?
I do a lot of talking about whole person. One of the if you look all the way back to the time of the Enlightenment, René Descartes, when he said, "I think, therefore I am," he basically violated everything that we now know in psychology and neuroscience. But it sounded so chic and so sexy that people went, "Hey, that's it," and it infected every corner of society, including the church. Including the church. So it became one of these where we worshipped how we think and our ability to solve problems. And because that became an emphasis, now we look at everybody as a problem. And that's a big leadership issue. The big leadership issue is when I see people, they're problems to be solved instead of mysteries to be unraveled or other semi-autonomous individuals to be curious about, right? Why were you made?
Give us a little definition. I mean, just that. Problems to be solved versus mysteries to be unraveled.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that's a huge statement right there that I think we can just pass over. But man, there's a lot there.
Well, and that's really kind of at the foundation of what I mean when I say I'm going to change the way leadership is done in America, right? if you look at the way products and services move into the market, there's everybody talks about value, creating value, right? You talked about HBR this morning, you know, Harvard Business Review. They have so many articles about value. Everything is about how are we creating value. The people, though, who create the value for us, right? General Charles Krulak, who was the Commandant of the Marine Corps back in the 90s, he made a statement that was repurposed into the private sector for business. But his statement was that the people that we really should be paying attention to are our privates, the people on the front line, because they're the ones who are creating what systems thinkers called mission moments. They're the ones who are doing the mission. They're the ones who are facing the customer. They're getting the stuff done. And so value creation is you take an idea, you run it through a series of iterations, and that idea has to serve the market. It has to answer, is there a need or a want that the market has? And then the models that the business models or iterations that pass the test and meet those needs basically make it to the market. So for instance, there are like 4,000 different mousetrap patents, but there are about 7 to 10 models out there on the market that are actually viable, right? So that's value creation, right? Which of these, because you talk about all the ideas, entrepreneurship is about ideas, and then resources. What are the levers, right? We need to do a lot with a little, so how do we leverage this thing? Well, that's what idea creation is all about. And one day I was walking and I was listening to a podcast about the guy who created Siri, the guy who created HDTV. He's a professor now, and he teaches on value creation. His name is Kurt Carlson. And I just got to thinking about my calling, and I was praying, and I was thinking about how special people are. When we were talking about, you know, the mystery that is people instead of a commodity. And I said, so how well are the leaders that I'm coaching and doing organizational culture work, how well are they creating value for their people? Or even more so, like, and I'll wrap up with this for right now. If you read the book "How to Win Friends and Influence People" by Dale Carnegie, which
great
is
book.
It's a classic.
Love it.
Right? He has an analogy in his book where he says that everybody has an invisible sign around their neck that says "Appreciate me." Right. So, what does the word "appreciate" mean, businessman?
It means say, hey, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you for your work. Thank you for your time.
What does it mean in terms of business, though? Like with real estate.
It's going to increase value.
Increase the value.
Yeah.
Right. So you're telling people you're valuable.
Yeah. Thanks for teeing that up as a softball for me.
Yeah. No, but and this is kind of how I coach, though. I'm always asking questions and really trying to tease out of people their mental models, their worldviews.
Sure.
Right. So what we're doing is we have to increase their value. So that's one of the tenets of leadership, is I help people understand beneath your drive to create customer value, there must be a foundation of, are you creating value for your employees?
Sure.
By helping them feel appreciated.
Yeah, this is so true. You've got to, if you want to deliver an incredible experience to your customer, you have to have an incredible experience for your employee team. Yeah. And
I see that all the time in the stuff that you post on LinkedIn. You know,
I focus on it hard.
Yeah.
Your people are your greatest asset. So while we've got you here, we talk about grit. We talk about what does it take to be successful. You know, as a coach of leaders, which I think is huge, because most people who are developing their business, most people who are hitting that 7-figure mark to that 9-figure mark, whatever that is, they're developing a leadership team. Mm-hmm. And I think this is probably one of the hardest things that any leader can ever do, because when you're in that, 6-figure range, you're the controller, you're the micromanager, you're the, you're the people who are pulling all those levers and, instigating those mechanisms. So as you're building a leadership team, which is so hard because you got to let go of control, you got to delegate. That's very stressful. What is the biggest failure that you see entrepreneurs making, and then what is the solution to that failure? Like, how do they overcome that? If we're giving away a couple tips, like if I'm struggling as a leader, what is that? Where am I going to struggle first, and what is that solution?
One of the since we're approaching it from this lens, the growth and scaling lens, I've coached many entrepreneurs and small business owners, and I'm not an EOS guy myself, but I have a lot of friends who are, and so I've rubbed elbows with them over the years. A lot of the work I've done is in corporate, big organizations like T-Mobile, Salesforce, Providence. I've coached from the director level all the way up to the C-suite in these organizations. And I found one thing in common in that journey. The journey is whether you're an entrepreneur or you're an individual contributor, right, an IC in an organization. They bring you into the organization. Let's use the corporate example. You come into the organization and you're an IC. You're a brilliant IC, individual contributor. You grow and you get more responsibility because you continue to produce as an IC.
Yep.
Then once you hit that level where you're basically maxed out in your effectiveness as an IC, what do they do to you next?
Make you a manager.
They make you a manager. They promote you, right? And actually, this is where the rubber meets the road in terms of people really start asking the question now then, gosh, do I even know how to lead? And by the way, that's a whole other podcast, the difference between manager and leader, right, in people's minds.
Yeah.
But people, they go, oh my gosh, no one has actually even taught me how to lead. And so there are these brilliant individual contributors who all of a sudden have been told, okay, your next job is to go lead other brilliant ICs and get them to do something. But here's the problem. For the last X amount of months or years, more likely years, right?
Yeah.
And this is an entrepreneurial thing too.
Even decades,
right? And I've dealt with people like that too.
Yeah.
Coached a leader at Nestle who was there for 19 years before she got promoted to be a director. Yeah, and that's the junior executive rank, right? But what happens is they have been told you are great, and they have been valued for being able to produce X amount of kinds of work. But now that value system has changed. Now the value that they're supposed to deliver is now you go with this team of 4 or 6 or 10 and get the same results out of them that you were able to produce.
They can't do it.
And they have no idea. Right. It's not their paradigm. And so they're lost. And you ask, what's the biggest thing? The biggest thing is because it's two sides of a coin. Number one, no one really taught them how to do it. Some people tend to be more natural leaders, right? When people ask, is leadership nurture or nature? I say yes. It's both.
Right.
There's some people with a very strong leadership spirit, but doesn't mean that they really know how to do it well.
Right.
And then there are some people that really want to learn how to lead, but don't have a strong leadership spirit. But if they learn the rules of the road and the relationship rules and obey them and grow into it. So it's both, and then it's a lot of time in the seat, as we used to say in the Navy. Get in the seat and get your reps. And so the biggest thing is they're not trained in the appropriate way how to lead. But and then the other flip side of the coin is that they're not taught to shift out of a world where they derive their value from one way and learn how to derive their value from another. So it makes it very hard for them to let go of the things that in the previous season made them valuable.
Yeah, this is true.
Does that make sense?
Because when their team starts to fall apart, they don't trust the team, and then they try to put the weight on their
exactly.
own shoulders.
They go back to their implicit training.
That's right.
This is what made me valuable in the previous season of life, so I'm just going to, kind of like the dog returning to its vomit, right?
Sure.
In Proverbs.
Yeah. There you
Great
go.
proverb.
I'm with you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's really kind of what it means practically.
Because they can't carry the load, so they break, and then the team breaks, and then they get fired, and they're starting over.
I work with leaders all the time like that. Yeah. Yeah.
That's great. So what is the tip? What are we training? How are you training leaders to overcome this? Like if you're in the seat for 5 years, 10 years, I mean, I can even see, you've pointed this out. I can even see it in my own organization today. Like you got light bulbs going
None
on.
of us is immune, dude.
What is it?
I'm not even immune to it. That's the thing I tell my clients. All these things I'm coming alongside you to help you because
learning?
Well, yeah, but we're not. There's subjectivity and then there's objectivity.
Sure.
Right? So this camera lens, if I'm looking through the camera lens, the view that I have of the world through the camera lens is my subjective view. But if I'm looking at the camera lens, I can see the smudges, I can see the cracks.
Yeah.
And that's object. That's
Right.
objectivity. I'm looking at the object instead of looking at the world through it.
Yeah.
So, or same thing with a smudgy window, right?
Right.
Right? If I'm looking at, this is just what I see every day. One day somebody cleans the window. Whoa. Or one day I look at the window and go, man, that window's filthy. Right? So that's why we're not immune because we're always, we actually have to slow down and look at things from a different perspective, and we have to receive.
Sure.
We have to receive.
Good.
I rely a lot on my wife for that. I rely a lot on mentors that I have and other coaches that I have to help point out my blind spots, because I have them too. That's why community is important. But once again, another podcast.
You got a lot of podcast ideas going on, man. Do you have a podcast?
I don't have a podcast myself. I've been guest on about a handful of them myself. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
But you've got some great ideas for 'em, man. You got a
Yeah.
lot of stuff going around. What's one thing that a leader should do today? Like if you were giving a leader an advice growing their business or whatnot, what is that advice?
It's a hard one. And the reason I say it's hard, I say because it's practically hard. Not it's practically hard to slow down. Slow down.
Slow down. That's the advice.
Yeah, and when I say slow down, I mean slow down long enough to be thoughtful and mindful of what's happening in the moment. And by the way, this is a competition, right? It's hard because the marketplace right now rewards speed.
Yep.
That's what the marketplace rewards. But what that has done over the years has created a vortex that has destroyed the fabric of community. Community doesn't operate on speed. In fact, I was just listening to a podcast yesterday that, like this morning on the way here, I was listening to it. I started listening to it yesterday, and I listened to it again this morning, the piece of it that said that God doesn't always operate on the speed that we want.
He
right?
never does.
No.
Are you kidding
This
me
is
right
why
now?
this is why be still and know. This is
right.
why those
Yeah.
who wait upon the Lord, right?
Yeah.
And so it's hard. It's practically really hard because the marketplace rewards speed. And I play in that marketplace, right? When I get people who say, hey, listen, I'm looking for a coach, and I've emailed 3 different coaches, or I'm looking for an organizational development consultant, or I get a referral. Right, the rule of thumb is, man, the sooner you can get to that referral while it's still hot is the better, right? So sometimes I'm in a conversation with my wife, and a text comes in and says, Paul, you need to talk to this business owner, and I'm like,
Right. All right, gotta go.
I'm like, babe, can I? And she's very patient and loving, right? She understands I'm an entrepreneur, but sometimes I look and I go, my wife was sharing something important with me, and I just ran to take care of this, right? So I'm not immune either. I'm being vulnerable with you.
Yeah, that's the difference between Chronos time and Kairos time.
yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
in Scripture, you know, we run at Chronos time. You know, the speed of having to get things done, but that Kairos time, that appointed time, that moment. You know, sometimes God can do more in a moment of time than we can with, you know, running with all the time we have in the world. So there are times where, you know, that be still and know that I'm God, or just that quieting yourself is so important, because you miss those Kairos moments, you know, those moments in time where all of a sudden everything can change, and the paradigm shift can come, and you can see things differently. You see your leadership team differently because you took the moment
Right.
to slow down,
Right.
and you let that moment come, and you were able to speak because you slowed down. So
And you
it's
can
not
ask
always-
yourself questions.
Yeah.
Gosh, what's Dave feeling right now at this moment?
Yeah.
How's Dave reacted to this stimulus that just came in? I mean, I know how I reacted,
Yeah.
but what's going on in his? There's part of that curiosity,
Yeah, I love that slow down.
Yeah.
Yeah, speed is not always the answer.
No. No.
Okay, we're going to bring this thing in for a landing with this final story. Did you ever work on an aircraft carrier?
I have been on aircraft carriers, but I flew the P-3 Orion, which is a land-based aircraft, and I only did one tour before I moved into being a human resources officer. So I have been on a...
So you were a fighter pilot.
Patrol guy.
Control guy.
Patrol.
guy.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
But you were up there in a jet.
No,
No.
4-engine turboprop. The P-3
Okay.
Orion, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I'm not that good with planes.
No,
so
that's
you know
okay.
What that looks like
That's
in your
okay.
mind.
Yeah.
But so you're patrolling and doing that. Okay, that's cool. So I'm going to tell this story.
Yeah,
And
please.
so I break my ankle, as the world now knows. And it's funny because you're talking about slowing down. So I like to run, pretty hard. And so my brother's talking to my wife, and they have this conversation that I'm not even a part of, which is fine. And my wife is telling me, she's like, well, your brother Jim says that it was really good for you to break your ankle because the Lord is slowing you down. And I was like, now,
Want to hear that?
when you can't move around, you do get slowed down. I'm
yeah.
going to be perfectly honest with you. You do get slowed down a little bit. But it's true. Slowing down, I think that's a huge thing. And whatever that looks like, it is good to slow down. And it is also good to slow down so that you can enjoy where you're at.
Yeah.
Because sometimes you can miss everything
Right.
by going so fast.
Well, the Navy Special Forces, the SEALs, they say that slow is smooth, and smooth is fast. And what I use that in coaching, but I also say sometimes you have to slow down to speed up.
That's true. Yeah,
That's
good.
a great piece of wisdom
Yeah.
to end this call. So, listen, we've got Paul. He's a consultant. So if someone wants to engage your services, if somebody wants to learn more about you, how do they get a hold of you? Are you on social media? How does somebody connect with Paul?
Yeah, I just best way is LinkedIn.
Okay.
Paul A. Perez in Seattle, Washington. Or you can email me. It's paul.perez@acceleratedbreakthrough.com, just like it's spelled. I do have a website, but I'm repurposing it right now.
Okay.
And so, but you can look it up, acceleratedbreakthrough.com. There is a contact link there. Yeah.
So follow you on LinkedIn.
Yeah.
Get in touch with this guy. As you can see, it's incredible content, incredibly intelligent. So really help you take your business to the next level. And not just with growth, but with everything from the introspection to sustainability, all the way across the board. You're talking about everything.
Yeah, I just, we're people.
There you
right?
go.
We're people.
Yep.
We're people.
Good stuff.
Got a lot of good nuggets. Dave, any final thoughts as we bring this in?
Not a whole lot, but other than, man, if you're successful in business, it gives you the opportunity to give back.
Yeah.
And I'm all about giving back. I think that we are stewards in this life, and it's not about us. It's not about what we own. It's about what we can manage and then give back.
Awesome.
Yeah.
This was a great call. The Entrepreneurial Journey. I'm Dave Westcott. Follow me on LinkedIn. Follow me on Facebook. Give us a like. Give us a share if this was good. We'll be back next week. And this was just an awesome call today. And I really love it. Slow down. That's it. That's the big tip. Slow down.
Slow down.
Love it.
You move.
Thank you, guys.